So we're going to talk about how to create a lasting brand that drives sales or community engagement, whatever you guys need in a digital era. About myself, I came from high-tech marketing, and then as a student, I built my first business. So I definitely know about marketing on a budget because we had about $0 to spend, and we just had to figure everything out for ourselves. And after about 4 years of this, I experienced a really hard burnout. So now I've become really passionate about helping other people figure out what those best processes are so that we can cut out all of that extra work, all this added pressure to hustle that we feel, and just figure out what's working for your organizations. And as she mentioned, I've done some fun stuff. So I like to touch on this because a lot of this actually came to me through social media. So as she mentioned, I'm a Lululemon ambassador. I've been featured on a lot of podcasts, and I've worked with Shopify quite a few times. So let's get into it. So why are we here? I want you guys to understand how we can extend our reach with limited resources. So what we're gonna cover is why to use social media, the 3 keys to a digital presence, and how to extend your network with online partnerships. Many of you have probably heard this with your organizations. You should have an online presence. It's like everyone's great free advice when they don't have to do the work, right? Everyone loves social media except for the people that actually have to get in and figure out how to do it for their business. So this is often the reaction we have, right? And I understand you guys are busy changing the world, right? So it sounds like a lot of work. So what if we could grow your impact in your sleep? This would be great, right? And this is why for you guys, we're really gonna talk about leveraging those partnerships so you can get that power of social media without having to do it all yourselves. So that is the power of social media. I know, it sounds like a lot of work. So where do we start? First off, you have to understand that social media comes down to 3 main components. The first one is know. People have to actually know who you are, right? So that comes down to showing up online. If you're not online, it's like just cutting off your access to a lot of people. Second up is like. People actually have to like you, right? They have to want to be your friend. They want to support what your organization is doing. And lastly, they have to trust you. So they have to feel that the information you're putting out is valid, the decisions you're making are good. If you're recommending things, they want to know that you're someone they can trust. So people don't trust you if they don't like you, and people can't like you if they don't know you. So that's why with social media, we really want to focus on those 3. How can we get people to know us, to like us, and to trust us? And so what we're going to focus on for you guys is how can we achieve this with a little help from our friends? We're going to leverage individuals who have already done the groundwork. Content creators like myself, I've already built a platform where people know me because I'm showing up, they like me because of what I've chosen to share, and they trust me because I'm always transparent about my partnerships, about the products I like. So I've already built that. So we're going to look at how you can kind of piggyback off the people who have already done that groundwork for you. That first category is influencers. So this is what I like to talk about for those more specific campaigns. So it might be somebody that you work with for a one-time thing, or if you have a specific campaign being rolled out over several months, this is someone you would partner up with whose audience matches exactly what you're looking for that specific campaign. And that's usually what we talk about with someone who has, a large following, and we're partnering with them because of that really wide impact they can have. Next is ambassadors. So with brand ambassadors, these are usually longer-term relationships. It's not always about the followers people have. It might be about what they're doing in their community. They often have a smaller following, but a really committed following. You might also hear those as micro-influencers. But for me, ambassadors are really those ones that you're taking on as a long-term partnership. So everything they do represents you, and everything you're doing, pretty much every initiative, is something they're talking about. And lastly is partners. So this is other organizations or companies that could partner up with you. So when we look at influencers, the biggest thing is finding your right fit. So a lot of people will just find someone with a huge number of followers, but it's not necessarily the targeted audience. So to get around that, you can ask people for some of their insights, so it shows you the breakdown of their audience. So find somebody that actually fits with the audience you want. And keep it professional. So because it's social media, a lot of people will reach out in the direct messages, they'll comment on a photo. That's an okay way to get connected initially, but make sure you're immediately moving it to email, because when you're working with influencers, the ones that are more serious will treat it very professionally, so you should be having that professional relationship in an email. It also helps to make sure everything's well documented. Set expectations. So sometimes people will just say, hey, can you post about this, right? We want to set really clear expectations. What are you asking of them? What are you giving them in return, if anything? What type of content? Do you want them to do posts on Instagram? Do you want them to do stories? Do you want them to post on all their social channels, right? Set really, really clear expectations. And balance the value. So you guys are in a bit of a different situation where for you, a lot of you guys are like not-for-profits. You're maybe not paying the person. You might not be giving them product. But try to make sure there's a balance of value so you're not just constantly asking for more and more and more, right? Make sure that you're really keeping in track like what you're asking for and what they're doing in return. And that's also why finding your fit is so important, because if you can find people that really care about what it is that you're doing, that's gonna be a lot easier because they won't mind to share a lot of content about your cause. And make it easy. So this comes back to the keeping it professional. I've been on both ends of I've used influencers to promote things and I've had people reach out to me. And the best partnerships are the ones where it's really clearly outlined. Like, this is the content I'd like you to share. Here's the bullet points of information you might need. Here's some graphics you can use, but you don't have to. I always like to give people a tentative schedule. Like, if we're launching something, I would say, can you post about this Monday to Wednesday? So you're not being like a micromanager, but you're giving them that idea, right? And then say, we're gonna launch on Friday, so if you can post on the launch, that would be great. And that's also a really great way to tie in, making sure that they're actually delivering on their promise. So if you've asked them to post things that are a little more tangible, specific content on specific days, it's a lot easier to check, especially when you're working with multiple influencers, like which ones are actually following through. All right, so for brand ambassadors, this one's even more important to nail the fit. You can think of sponsored athletes for this, right? When something happens with a sponsored athlete, a company like Nike immediately has to decide what they're going to do, right? Because it's such a close tie to them, it's really reflecting their business. So you have to be very careful about the same things, right? So you wanna make sure that you also are very aligned. It's up to you if you're comfortable, like working with a brand ambassador who speaks out about a lot of political things, that's fine. You would just wanna make sure that more times than not, they're doing it respectfully, or maybe they are on the same side as your organization. And as well with these ones, find mutual value, especially if they're representing you long-term. If you're asking them to do events, to speak for you, to show up for you a lot more, just making sure that we're always balancing, because that's the quickest way to lose people, is when people are just asking and asking and asking. And talk long-term. So for brand ambassadors, you might be aligned right now, but you wanna know where they're going in 2 years, in 5 years, maybe even 10 years. Because you might have someone that's really passionate about something right now, but they're gonna go to law school in 4 years and they're gonna go off of social media. And lastly is partners. So with partners, you wanna look for lookalike audiences. Are there other organizations or companies that have very similar audiences to you? It could be a new audience that you wanna get into, or it could just be a mirrored audience. So not necessarily the same people making up that audience, but the same profiles making up that audience, right? So I talked about that. So look for people that have similar audiences, and then shared value exchange. And that's really easily achieved when you do have those lookalike audiences, because if you're doing any type of cross promotion or partnership, it's good for both of you, right? Because you're getting in front of those ideal audiences. And size doesn't matter. So a lot of people think when they're a smaller organization that they can't partner with the big guys, right? Or they can only partner with people smaller than them. So in my first business, we were in fitness apparel. We often partnered with people that were significantly larger to us. It was a really great way to have those big brands look more integrated into the community, right? Look like they care about supporting the little guys, right? Because often that's what happens, right? The big guys are like on this pedestal that's just kind of happened whether they've wanted it to or not. That's a really important point to look at. So with all of these, I wanted to cover a few of the main points that are really gonna help you succeed, whether you go the influencer route, brand ambassadors, or partners. So the main thing is to get specific. So know your brand, define your audience, and borrow their shoes. So always think about, what does my customer wanna see? Where is my customer hanging out? If you speak to everyone, no one hears you. So when we're thinking about our customer, I want you guys to create customer personas. And this works for all social media and all marketing. You should be able to answer every nitty gritty detail of your customer. You should have like a specific person in your head. You could even name them. Naming them is really great if you have like 2 to 3, so that when you're speaking in a group with your peers or your coworkers, you know exactly who you guys are talking about. So create this customer persona and then think about what brand ambassadors or partners or influencers actually align with this audience. And then you can do the same thing with those partners you want to work with. Think about what type of content do they share, what platforms are they on, what does their audience look like? Even things like where do they live? Because maybe, it's an issue that people in Texas don't care about, and your influencer has a large Texas base of their audience, or they're living in Texas and it makes it really difficult for you to bring them to wherever your organization is, right? So think about all of these different things and lay it all out. Like I said, emails are a really, really great way to just be as thorough as possible. So agree on the specifics, provide all possible needed info, provide promotional assets. Something like that is really great to provide, but also say you don't have to use these, right? It can just be a nice tool if they want to. Set a clear content schedule. So I gave you guys that example. And answer any unknowns. Make sure you're saying, like, is there anything that's unclear? Because sometimes when they go to post, they're gonna realize that some of that important information wasn't provided, and then it's a very last-minute scramble. And follow up. So make sure, are they delivering on their promise? Have they gotten feedback from their audience? That's a conversation a lot of people don't have, right? If they're promoting like a new campaign that you guys have launched, has anybody been responding? Can they share that with you? Have you asked for a report? So sometimes whenever I do paid influencer work, they'll often ask for a report the following week that says things like how many people watched my stories, how many people commented on my post, those kind of questions. You can ask if they've actually enjoyed it, see if it's a relationship that could last longer. A lot of the times people make the mistake of making it really transactional, and then the next time you go to do a campaign, you didn't really resonate with that person potentially. So if you can follow up, get on a call, see what kind of response they got, ask them, like, is this something you'd be interested in doing again with us?
We wrote Greetings Good People because you are good people. We like to work with folks who are trying to make the world a better place, so we're so delighted to be here. Here's kind of what we're going to talk about here today. Audience trends and principles. Want to talk a little bit about how the communications environment is changing, specifically how audiences are consuming information in different ways, and what that means for us as communicators. So trying to put ourselves in the shoes of that audience and give a real understanding of when we're creating content and we're talking about engaging with people, what are we talking about in 2019 and beyond? We're giving some tips for content creation, so if you happen to be either guiding the development of content, perhaps if you're working as a director of comms, what does that mean, what does that look like? Or if you're the person who's plugging and chugging through Canva or one of the other kinds of tools I know you're going to be talking about a little bit later, if you're doing things in-house. What does that mean, and what are some of the principles to keep in mind when you're developing content? And then we wanted to finish with investing your budget wisely. We have a slide kind of towards the end talking about, if you do have some dollars to spend, maybe perhaps where to put it, whether it's in strategy, whether it's in paid advertising, things like that. And if we have time at the end, hopefully you can ask us anything. That's kind of our kind of standalone slide. If there's any burning questions, as well as we have some time after as well to answer questions at the back if you'd like to. This is my favorite slide of all time. When social media was first kind of taking hold in a lot of organizations, this was kind of the approach, right? It's like we kind of hand it to the youngest person in the room. That's kind of how things got started, right? Is the idea of like this thing that's on the side, the thing that's a little bit different. This is a news organization, media organization called Now This that develops content natively for the platform. So what I mean by that is they're not on Facebook, hey, click through to our website in order to get more information. They're developing content uniquely, exclusively for that platform, for the audience on that. The New York Times, this leaked out a couple of years ago. It was an innovation report. It was an internal report. And this basically said, New York Times is winning at journalism, but they're falling behind at the art and science of getting news to people. I'm talking in a news context here, but this is just content, right? This is just information. This is just getting information out to the world. So these folks are struggling it. If we're struggling with it, that's okay. 1 in 3 Canadian smartphone owners use their phone while watching TV. Okay, let's unpack that for a second. So not only that yourself, perhaps as a communicator, might be getting an impression on a Facebook post, right? You're only getting a share of their attention. As if we weren't distracted enough, Apple a couple years ago came out with the Apple Watch. This as well, this is Periscope. I'm not talking about just the fact that there are social media platforms that are out there and they exist, sure. I'm not going to talk about perhaps the purposes of using a thing like Periscope. Just from a strategy standpoint, this is a kind of content that someone can just create off the cuff, right? So you are competing as a content developer with folks who are doing Cats Home Alone and all these other things that are going on, right? So think about the time, the effort, the resources you put into the creation of your content, but you're competing with really just someone just opening up their phone and streaming Cats Home Alone. This is something Facebook did a couple years ago. It actually allows publishers to publish content through metadata directly to Facebook, essentially, and it basically loads in the back end before someone even clicks on it. So it has this feeling of instantaneous, so it just loads right away. This is either depressing or inspiring, depends on which way you look at the world. Content advertising, more targeting, personal, and dynamic than ever before, and audiences are more distracted, impatient, and more social focused than ever before. That's the environment we have to kind of navigate now, right? And I want to talk about a little bit about creating kinds of content that people want to share. And because when someone shares a piece of content, that's a mark of high value for you. The fact that someone's shared something to their followers, or their friends, they trust that person, right? It's an endorsement of it. So just talking about a little bit about the kinds of things to think about when you're developing your content. Other observations, it's really crowded. As more folks are adopting a lot of these tools, Instagram stories, Snapchat, TikTok, those sorts of things. This real quick, bite-sized content off the cuff that just kind of get created and then they're gone. But that user is focused on that piece of content while it's happening. Meanwhile, you're putting a lot of time and effort and resources into a piece of content, and hopefully you'll get a share of that. Organic reach is dropping, something we've noticed as well sometimes, and it depends on the platform. By that I mean, although your subscriber numbers might go up, the share of the audience who actually sees your content organically might go down. It's shifting to more of a pay-to-play environment in a lot of circumstances. There are a lot of folks that are kind of gaming some of the algorithms to get more attention. There are different actors out there that have kind of figured out how to get more traction in the newsfeed, which can be very challenging to compete with. Algorithm everything. By that I mean we have this view of the world that is curated by what the platforms think we're going to agree with and be engaged by, and we have to navigate that as content creators as well. Content and ad strategies must be tied together, so thinking about all the nuanced ways you can use if you're going to put money into advertising, how to actually go ahead and target folks that way, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. Some are slower to adopt digital ads. We worked with some friends of ours that put a lot of money into a digital engagement platform, really invested in a really good way for people to be able to interact with members of parliament and an advocacy standpoint. But when it came to actually going and paying to advertise that opportunity to kind of get more people in, it was really hard to kind of $100, $200. Content principles, making your message go further. Audience-focused content is the best content. When Hillary Clinton launched her last presidential campaign, she didn't launch it necessarily with a big speech, but it was all these series of ads of her at coffee shops, right? You want to watch that, right? The idea that people want to watch that. You ever seen this Tim Hortons ad where there's a kid who jumps over the boards at a hockey game, and then Sidney Crosby jumps over and then a bunch of other people, and then all these people from Canada are jumping over. And it's a Tim Hortons ad, and at the end, I'm crying, and it's just really emotional, and I just want to eat Timbits. The idea of you want to share that, right? You want to see people. It's audience focused. The idea of seeing ourselves in it. What do people want to share? Looking critically at your own content, your own messaging in terms of, is this something that someone want to say, I'm inspired by this, I'm excited by this, I want to go ahead and share that. So try to take, your individual passion for the work out of it and look real critically at it and say, hey, is this something that my individual audience member want to do? Be human and authentic, staying away from slogans and jargon, and just being human and authentic and real with people. Trying to look critically at your content can be important. Being practical and useful, what can people do with the information, If you do get someone's attention, that's a big thing to ask, right? What is it that they can find to be actionable for the information, to feel like they're involved in something? Watching trends in popular culture can be really interesting too. Going behind the scenes. People love to see that. People love to see just the people who are doing the work behind the scenes. No one sounds like a broken record online. This is something that Buffer did a couple years back, where they actually posted 3 pieces of the same content to Twitter at different times of the day. Didn't change anything about it. Basically just posted the same piece of content 3 times. Understanding that, this is even a time where before Twitter was too algorithm-based, now it's very curated, very, very algorithm-based, similar to Facebook and Instagram. But going and after someone got all the approvals on this content and got everything done, they just posted it 3 times instead of once. And you can see that the engagement is going up, the retweets are going up. So if you can get a little bit of more traction out of your content by thinking of it outside of the context of just, this is a blog post we're going to post once, right? Thinking of ways to repackage things can be important too. So reuse, resize, repackage. A news release becomes a blog post, becomes a mobile-friendly infographic, becomes a standalone quote on Twitter. To give you a really specific example from my time in politics, I worked for Mayor Watson in the past, and this is something we did on his housing announcement during the 2014 campaign. Really, it was a news release. We got our news release. What we did is just made a little quick infographic of the lead of the news release, which is, it's fine, but it gives you the gist of what he's saying, right? You just grab the quote from the news release, and then a little thing from the backgrounder. So this is something that goes through many steps of approval. Finding ways to just get a little bit more out of that by posting in more than once is really important. So remember, the social web is not linear. It is algorithm based. People are sharing content at different times, and things are being served up to people in different ways. So post often, encourage discussion. If you can get someone to comment on something, engage with something, the algorithms are going to give you a couple extra points for things. That's just really the only way I could use to describe kind of the weird black box that is social media algorithms. Encouraging folks to go and actually engage with it will show it to other people. Trying different types of content, throwing different kinds of speeds or different things at the machine and see what sticks, Not sticking with one kind of content we've noticed is good too. Reactive engagement. So if someone comments on something that is positive, you can say, thanks for the comment. You can go and post that as well. On tools such as Instagram, or all the tools really, acting as the page or acting as the profile to go around to supporters or different pages to go and like their content. Going on offense and really just engaging with people that way can be really important too. Remember, your headline is your pitch. Some things get really clickbaity in the online space. These were Upworthy and BuzzFeed, things like that. But you kind of get a sense of these real human approach on things. It makes you want to click on it when you write in a really human-focused way. I want to read that article. You've been cutting apples wrong your entire life. How? So this is something that lots and lots of political organizations do quite effectively. The idea of the pseudo petition where people are able to add your names. But what I think the idea behind this is just it makes you feel like part of something. The bottom right there, we did this very simple call to action, but also it made it very, very easy, low barrier to entry. That's probably what I want to get across, right? The idea of making it as easy as possible. This has been used in sales for a long, long time. There are more people who don't know who you are. There's fewer people who do know who you are. But talking to folks at those different stages of engagement. When you look in the not-for-profit space, as people who have maybe have this general awareness of you, who've shown interest, they're ready to make a decision, then they take an action, right? So thinking of ways to cater to folks based on where they are in that journey with you. So looking really strategically at, if you have existing lists, if you're building Facebook audiences, those sorts of things, talking to folks in ways and targeting them in ways that acknowledge the fact that they might have an existing relationship with you. Know your toolbox. This is something we do in our comms training from time to time, thinking about all the various things available to you. Social and digital, that's one component, but there's a whole bunch of different ways to tell your story. Investing your budget wisely. So if you do have dollars, here's some of the ways that we think can probably be well invested. They can look critically at the approaches you've been taking, look critically at the language you've been using, and perhaps provide some ways forward on that. And sometimes the development of a document like that could include workshops, interviews, like really getting a real honest understanding from your members or the folks you're trying to engage about how they actually consume information, taking a step back to ask those things. Consultations are sometimes part of that, especially folks who work with coalitions. Sometimes it can be challenging to find that common ground, but having kind of an impartial third party can be helpful. And then once that's done, you can implement that plan yourself, or you can go and you can work with a firm to actually continue it, whether it's the same firm who developed it or other folks as well. Cornerstone graphics and videos. Sometimes it makes sense to bring someone at the beginning to develop that overarching campaign or engagement brand, and then work with your existing resources. So in the scope of work, including things like templated shareables, for example, where folks are able to actually go and just do that in the day-to-day. You can, or if you want to, continue that work and have someone manage the social channels, if you have those resources, those are available to you. But when you separate strategy and tactics, when you separate the guiding documents or the guiding creative with the implementation, it gives you a lot more options if you happen to be buying a service from someone. Paid advertising, that can be important as well. So in the digital space, social media is becoming very pay to play. But it's important to understand the ad targeting options too. So, I think the entry level option for advertising is boosting a post. So you put money in the creative or the link, and you have it there and you get the approvals on it. But having stuff running in the background, constantly targeting to people as well can be important. So something we've been working with Lead On a little bit with, in terms of like, there are people who have engaged with our page in the past who haven't liked us yet. Well, let's try to target them in different ways too. So finding ways just creatively to bring people down that funnel, that ladder of engagement, can be important.
As many of us know, video content is typically one of the higher performing types of content that you can have on social media, but it can also seem like one of the most intimidating types to create in terms of human resources and financial resources. So these are some platforms to help make some quick and easy videos to share across your channel. So we'll run through TikTok, PEWG, and Lumen 5, which is my personal favorite. So has anybody in the room tried to use TikTok before? So it is a social media platform, so it's completely free to use. What's really cool is that it has audio clips and filters that you can build right in and then cross post to your Instagram account with a push of a button. So these videos are meant to be made 1 minute or less. The downside is that you do have to grow a new platform audience, but what's really cool about TikTok is they have a trending page similar to Twitter where most people spend most of their time. So if you're able to get on that trend and act quickly, and you can attract a lot of eyeballs that way as well. So the next one is PEWG. So it makes animated graphic videos, or those whiteboard explainer videos. There's a free option, but there's also pro options that you can subscribe and pay for on a monthly or yearly basis. We've used the free version before to make little introduction videos to things on our Facebook page specifically, so to introduce a spotlight on Canadian projects in Haiti. Just it's a new way to quickly engage eyeballs, and it's quite fun and attracts different ages too, especially younger audiences. So this one is my absolute favorite. So this is Lumen 5. It's really, really great for turning your existing written content into those quick word videos, and it is easy, so you don't need sound, but you can add sound, but it can play and you can read and engage without having to actively click into the video. So earlier this week I took the latest gender equality blog that we wrote. I simply just entered the URL, it plopped all the words in there and recommended spacing, it recommended background images that you can easily swap out with photos of your own or some from their library, and then you can add different colored themes to match your branding or some of the recommended ones. It's just a really quick and easy tool. I made a video for Instagram TV in under 15 minutes the other morning. The one downside is that you're only on the free version allowed to export 5 videos per month, but if you think about it, that's still over a video for each week, so that's still a pretty good amount. And they also have monthly subscribe options, so if you know you're producing a lot of content, you can just subscribe for a month and then cancel it or continue. And with those paid options, you also get more options in terms of the stock library and audio options as well.
Hi everyone, so I'm presenting on different quiz tools. We've seen really incredible engagement ourselves on quizzes, and we know a lot of our members have too. So we were sort of thinking, graphics are key, videos are key, no question, but if you want to get a little bit fun and focus specifically on engagements, as we were talking, actually people taking action, going further steps, I think quizzes are a great option. So first of all, different styles. So the first one is sort of the typical BuzzFeed checklist, talking about listicles and things like that, where you can do a checklist. This is a very silly topic, but for the Women Deliver mobilization, for example, we did a feminist checklist, and people could check off, and then you get your tally. You can compare with your friends, but also then there's a list of great actions that people can take to advance gender equality. The other type is a personality quiz. I think we're used to that. Which feminist icon are you? You can put in things that matter to you, what you prefer. I prefer chocolate to strawberry, and then so I'm more like, Ruth Bader Ginsburg or something like that, right? And you can make it a lot more meaningful as well. And then, so that's the personality option. And then also, I like to call these experiential quizzes. So as Gak was saying, it's really important to put people in, to connect them with other people, put you in the shoes. So here's a great one that we recently saw, about toilet privilege. So you can go through and you can see your own toilet privilege, and then also it connects with other types of people. So you can see different water and sanitation and hygiene issues around the world. I've also seen a lot of ones linking to bride price. So how many cows are you worth? How many camels are you worth? And then it links to some child marriage and gender inequality issues as well. So these are really interesting. And also, of course, there's the typical trivia quiz. I didn't include that because I think we've all seen trivia before, but you can test someone's knowledge on a wide variety of topics, and then again, take them through the journey, sharing key stats that you want them to know. So for the quiz tools, the 3 that I chose to focus on today are Opinion Stage, Interact, and They Draw It. So Opinion Stage, we chose that for the Women Deliver mobilization, the checklist quiz, simply because a lot of different tools didn't even have that option. It was quite difficult to find it. So if you want the list option, it is trickier to find than trivia or personality, for example. So it's really good. It's a little, not the most user-friendly, I would say, but it has a wide variety of templates and styles. So if you want, a certain quiz style and it's got to be opinion stage, it's good. The only thing is they sort of make you go through the demo. You have to set up a call. You can't just sign up and go for it. So there is a free version, of course, but then you're more limited. But one thing I do like about Opinion Stage is that they have monthly subscription. So like Lauren was saying, if there's 1 month where you're going to do a quiz, a month or two, and then you can just cancel it. You don't have to pay for an entire year. And also, our colleagues at One actually introduced me to this tool. So They Draw It. So if you have some content that's focused more on statistics and data, it can be really interesting. So they used it to show the level of ODA that Canada gives, and they got a huge amount of engagement. So people were actually able to draw in. You can see those 4 purple points at the bottom. That's me starting to actually draw myself on the quiz, and then they show you the final results. Normally, we don't interact with numbers, so this is really inventive, and it's a completely free tool. So it's a great option if you're sharing some key stats. And then finally, Interact is the one that I'm really interested in. It has, similar to Opinion Stage, it has lots of different templates and styles that you can choose from. It's user-friendly, it's really attractive, and again, it's free, and you have the basic package, and then there's different subscription options, but it is free to try for everyone. And you can get started with using a template, or you can work from scratch. They have their stock photos. You can use your own photos, similar to the other ones. And what I really like is the end result can be quite polished, especially if you pay for one of their subscription plans. So this is a recent one that Care Canada used. So this is the trivia type quiz on WASH. And you can see that, they were able to get quite close to their branding color. In the bottom right-hand corner, it will say powered by Interact, but overall, it's very much a Care quiz, and driving traffic straight to the website, so it's a good option for that. Now we will be discussing how to make graphics on a dime. These are some tools you can use to make social media shareables, infographics, and more for free. First one we'll be covering is Pictochart. Then we'll go over Pablo by Buffer, and lastly, we'll discuss Canva. For Pictochart, it has a wide range of different templates you can use, and they're really eye-catching. You can make infographics, presentations, posters, reports, and social media images. They have a free version and also a very affordable subscription option, which is priced yearly. And here's Pablo by Buffer. So this image was made using Pablo by Buffer. We find it's the quickest way to get a quote or statistics shareable for social media. It's completely free. There's never any paid option. And it's a really quick tool, easy to use to make images and graphic cards. You can use your own photo like we did here, or you can choose from one of their attractive background options. It allows you to edit the font and add in a logo, so it's really a no-fuss graphic design tool. And lastly, here is Canva. It's a very popular option. It has a lot of templates as well as a photo gallery, which makes it easy to put things together. There's a free version and monthly and annual subscription options as well. Canva's really useful, especially when working in teams, because you can easily share your work, and so you can have multiple editors on one piece, making it a pretty seamless experience if you're working on something in a team.